So, Mark, for those of you that don't know, I'm Lolo Roberts. I am the founder of Grateful Gratitude. I've had the pleasure of having Mark Friedman do my podcast for 3 years now, I think. During this journey of podcasting, Mark decided that he was going to not care for himself and end up in the hospital on life support.
That's rude.
But we're going to be frank this time. No. So Mark ended up, unfortunately, on life support for over 30 days and in rehab for 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So about 4 months of his life.
4.5, almost 5.
Almost 5 months. He was not who we knew him to be. And so we did do about a week and a half, 10 days, 2 weeks ago. I don't really remember. We sat down. We did one of my gratitude meetings. We filmed what we thought was going to be about 20 minutes of Mark leading up to ending up in the hospital. And honestly, cathartically, it lasted longer because I think there were some things that you needed to explain fully. And so we didn't get to some of these pertinent questions. And so that's what the purpose of this video is.
Yeah, I think it's very important too, because if you watched that presentation I did, to me, it looked a whole lot like I was patting myself on the back because we didn't get to part 2. Which we're going to get to right now. What I wanted to do, my goal was to talk about the way I was before the hospital stay, everything leading to it, how active I was. And then in one moment, which actually took 4 months, but my life completely changed. And I went from being active and doing things for others to not being able to do anything even for myself. And so that was the goal. But we didn't quite get to part 2.
No,
so I'm afraid that it looked like all I did was celebrate everything I was before. And I want to talk about the after.
Right. So I developed a few questions that were pertinent to the walk I saw Mark go through during actually when you were discharged, and we started communicating some things as you were remembering things. But the first question I want to ask you, Mark, is I want you to compare yourself about 18 months ago, before you got sick, just life in general and the things you were doing, to where you're sitting right now. Compare and contrast. What did you have then? What could you do then that you struggle with right now? Or is there anything?
You know what? It's every day gets a lot better. And I think I'm to the point now in the recovery. I'm still recovering every day. You can hear it in my voice. I'm back to the point where I can do everything I was doing before, except lifting heavy things. I'm still pretty weak, especially compared to what I was before. But the day-to-day stuff, I'm good with. I've completely forgotten how to swing a golf club, and that's very discouraging, believe it or not. I know that sounds funny, but it is very discouraging. Mm-hmm. But everything else, I'm self-sufficient, independent. I'm ready to get back on the motorcycle, and I'm improving every day. So that's good. I'm still struggling, and we'll get into this, with what was the message that was being sent to me. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that in a second.
So the next thing I want to ask you, though, is I think you answered, but I don't think – I want to look, because we've just discussed, we were looking at pictures of you, which you don't really describe yourself very kindly. I guess I didn't see the weight difference.
I was fat.
Well. And
there's nothing wrong with that. Fat people know they're fat. I was fat.
But through this process, how much weight did you lose because of this condition?
When I checked into the hospital, they said I weighed 271. In the hospital, at one point I was down to 179, so close to 100 pounds, all muscle that I lost. Mm-hmm. And then, believe it or not, Lori, I don't know whether to call you Lori or Lola.
You call me whatever you want.
Believe it or not, when I got out of the hospital, I was back up to like 220. Uh-huh. And right now I'm down to 188.
Okay.
And I like that.
Okay.
Because I'm choosing to be there. I probably want to be about 215, but that's okay.
So you're good. But
Yeah.
So I know that on one of our videos we talked about, or you shared with me that you kept your golf glove, and I think I still see
Yes,
it
it's
over
right
there. Your
Hey,
golf
Chris, toss that glove to me.
that you kept this golf glove with you as kind of a goal setter to get back, to inspire you, to encourage you to get back to playing golf. Talk to me about the things that those little, I would say, anchors that you can hang on to build that strength to get back.
Well, here's the thing. Very few people, you're one of them. Denise Hoyle is another one. And if you saw part one of this, Sil was a big part. But really Sil was a big part before I got in to the hospital. Denise was major when I was in the hospital. We may get into this later too, just to put it in your head.
Okay.
I'm very bad about accepting help from others. Denise picked up on that. Denise knew that. And Denise didn't even ask if I wanted help. Denise just did, which was great. And when I got out, I really struggled because when I got out, I was a completely different human being as far as physically what I could do. And in part one, you saw me talk about the tools that my occupational therapist gave me that I didn't want. I did not want to be someone who required special assistance. So I kept the golf clubs out. I kept the glove out to motivate me because I was not going to allow myself to be, for lack of a better word, handicapped all my life. I wanted to get back. And those things motivated me. The glove motivated me every day. Keeping the golf clubs in front of me in the apartment motivated me. I took the walker and I buried it in the closet.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Yeah, it does. So I would also throw in there Rona, because I know that.
Now you're trying to make me cry.
No, but I know that and for you that don't know, that's Mark's beautiful little dog. But I have to think there were times that you were in the hospital that you just thought about being reunited with Rona and how she kept you going.
Here's the problem with that. And that was a major problem that I don't know if anyone knows really. In the hospital, that was one of my biggest concerns. Was, am I going to be able to take that dog back and be fair to the dog that needs to be walked, wants to go outside, wants to play. And that was a very big concern that I had. And really a major concern to the point where, and once again, if you watched part one, after part one, I went to lunch like the next day with Sil, and she was making fun of me kind of because the phone conversation I had with her that I didn't remember, and I didn't talk about that in part one because I didn't remember this, but I think it was probably right after I checked myself into the ER, and like I said in part one, things I didn't remember. She pointed out that I'd called her, and she tried to imitate the conversation, and Chris is behind the camera right now. Did you hear her imitate me? Yeah. And she said, it was like this. You were saying, and you couldn't catch your breath, and all you would say is, Sil, Rona. And I was so concerned about wanting to make sure that she could take care of Rona while I was in the hospital. And that was just a very huge concern of mine. And that's one of the biggest blessings and accomplishments right now is that I've got Rona and everything's great with her.
And if I remember correctly, and I know that you will correct me if I'm not.
Absolutely.
I think Rona actually went and lived in the frat house for a little bit already.
Yes, I didn't know about that until I woke up, obviously.
But
well after I woke up.
But I still think that's wonderful that was your nephew, right?
Yeah.
You know, that there were so many people that immediately, I personally was at the hospital in the prayer vigil for you that night when people were going, what about his dog? Where's his dog? Has someone let the dog out? So it wasn't just your family that knew about Rona. We all knew about Rona and were worried. And of course, Joel had already taken care of that. But let's go back a little bit because some people may or may not know that you were recently divorced. I don't remember exactly when that happened, but before all this happened. So where, you
And
know,
by the way, I was very thankful for that too. Not in a bad way, not in a funny way, but I was very thankful that I didn't put a wife through this.
yeah. My question is though, if I was incapacitated, Wes would still be able to handle the bills, feel grateful gratitude questions the best he could, but there was nobody there to do that for you.
No.
So, and we're talking, I think 34, 36 days on life support. How did someone even come to know what to take care of for you? Or did they? Did it all just go belly
They didn't.
up?
Fortunately, and if you know me, I'm a little crazy sometimes. Fortunately, I had an emergency fund that was all cash in a cabinet in my apartment. I think I told Syl where it was. Maybe not. I was a month ahead on my rent, so that was good.
Wow.
And the craziness was that I still am convinced that one of our next terrorist attacks is going to be a cyber attack on our banking system. So I started kind of hoarding cash so that I'd have it in case the banking system went down for a couple of weeks. So I had cash in my apartment. And that's one of the first things I did when I woke up was I told my brother who's in the room where the cash was. And I was very concerned about, okay, am I up to date on certain things? And somehow, some way, I still don't know this, how it happened, but they got a key to my mailbox. And I was pretty much debt free. So it wasn't that hard. And I had the cash at home to cover rent and stuff like that. They just had to find it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, that was smart.
Yeah.
But, people don't realize that either. Even like when a spouse dies, you sometimes think you have everything all laid out. And there's still things that you don't know, that you're still looking for passwords or things. So,
And by the way, those things don't matter when you're literally on my deathbed. And I want to say this too. I am so not alone. I mean, every day there's tens of thousands of people that are laying in the same condition I was in. So I'm not even trying to come close to pretending that what I went through was anything other people don't go through every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're really seeing that, with the pandemic and the hospitals. But I guess that's another thing is how grateful I was that there was a bed open for you during the pandemic. I just recently had extended family that had a heart attack over the weekend, that there was no room in the hospital and ended up in urgent care and then had to be taken by ambulance to another hospital miles and miles away. And we just don't realize that. So I was very grateful that and you were transported to a different hospital.
Yeah, I don't know if you know the story about that.
Well, I know some stories, but go ahead and share with people who don't.
I got transported to a great hospital. As a matter of fact, the CEO of the hospital that I originally checked myself into, he and I are friends.
Yeah, I know him well too. Yeah,
And
he's a great guy.
he is a great guy, fantastic guy. And he was one of the first phone calls I made. I keep saying one of the first phone calls I made because when I woke up and was able to use my phone, I did make a handful of calls. And I called him to tell him I'm sorry that it didn't work out at his hospital. And he told me, man, Mark, and I was so thankful to see you leave my place because you would have died in my place. I didn't want to see you die. You went to a very good place. And the way I ended up where I ended up evidently was I knew the right people. And I wouldn't have been there if I didn't know the right people. And it took legwork to get me into that hospital. And there's a very good chance when I'm told if I hadn't transferred to that specific hospital at that specific time, I wouldn't be here.
So, of course, that's going to lead me into God. and how God blesses us with things that we don't even recognize at the time is a blessing. But let's talk a little bit about faith. And of course, you did say in the first part that faith is what got you through this. But I want to go just a bit deeper.
Please.
Because I know that we've done on other podcasts and videos that you never lost your faith ever during this. But so I'm going to ask you this question because we talked about it a little bit before we started recording. Is recently I've been studying a lot about afterlife and near-death experiences. And did you ever feel that there might have been a time that you were going to leave us but stayed with us?
This is hard because I'm discovering things now that I probably should have understood then, but I'm glad I didn't. First of all, I think I said in the first part, I'm fine dying. I'm just fine with where I'm at. I know where I'm headed. I know in the end I win. I don't want pain. I don't want illness. I don't want another hospital stay. So that faith got me through. But I think it also kept me from fully understanding where I was at physically, which is a good thing, while I was in the hospital. And it has led me to now, we're a year and a week removed from when I checked myself in, and I'm still learning things. And last week I discovered that I may, gosh, I don't, please don't stop watching after you hear this because it sounds crazy. But last week I discovered that there's a chance I had an out-of-body experience. And when I say chance, I'm still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I think I told the story. I know I've told it on different episodes we've done about after surgery, waking up, coming out of anesthesia in my hospital room with all these people surrounding my bed, freaking out, cussing, because I couldn't figure out because I was bleeding internally. Mm-hmm. And they're cussing and they're freaking out. And I remember laying there thinking, guys, I'm right here. I can hear a word you're saying. Mm-hmm. After thinking about that and talking to some people, there's a possibility that was a near death. Mm-hmm. And there's a possibility, I don't know. But I didn't know then what I know now. And it's probably a good thing. Yeah. It's probably a good thing that I didn't know then. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And studying what I'm studying, that's very common, especially with what your doctors were yelling and screaming and what was happening. But after you kind of investigate that and soul search a little bit, we'll do something down the road on that. Yeah. I want you to, we're going to go to maybe an unhappy point and then to a good point. So we'll work through this. During your whole time there, whether it was conscious time, even unconscious time, because I think unconscious time, you're still conscious to something. What was either the darkest or most difficult thing for you to have to deal with during this walk?
The darkest time in the hospital is kind of a funny time. In the hospital, in the ICU, because you got to understand, I was in the ICU the whole time I was under medical care, was in the ICU. And I went straight from the ICU to a physical therapy rehab. By the way, this is my universal sign for physical therapy is curls. But in the ICU, when they set me up, they wanted me to just sit on the edge of the bed. And I didn't know how bad off I was physically. Mm-hmm. It was the first time I really moved. And they had to have 4 people surround me. And they had to position me. I needed every bit of help that I could get to just get to a position where I was sitting on the edge of the bed and they had to hold me up. 2 people on each side of me, one in the front, one in the back. First time I realized how bad off I was physically. And I looked at the nurse who was right in front of me, and this is how stupid I am. I looked at her and I said, oh my gosh, am I going to have to get rid of my motorcycle? And her response was, F yeah. And she used the word. And I started to cry. And she said, you should never bought that effing thing in the first place. So it was kind of funny, but it was the first dose of really reality of what the fight that I was going to have to go through. Mm-hmm. And to just get back to the point where I could do things. Mm-hmm. So that was that was one of the darkest. The other dark spot was when I talked about this in the first part, when the occupational therapist, Samantha, came in with those tools and I told her, you're not here to teach me how to be handicapped. That was a dark spot. I'm embarrassed now, and I've been told I don't have to be, but I'm embarrassed for the way I treated her. I'm embarrassed for the way that I treated just out of my own frustration. And there were only moments of frustration. It wasn't prolonged, and that's why I think they've told me don't be embarrassed and you don't owe us any apologies, because it was instances. It wasn't even more than a minute of frustration. But there were moments where I was not a very good patient.
Well, and I think when that's very much to be expected. And I think people who are trained in ICU just have a very special gift from God to be patient with their patients.
By the way, that's why I want to point out that if you only watched part 1 of this, the whole point of it was to show you how different I was, because when you go from the way I was before, where I was active, I was doing as much as I could, even though I was fat, I was still active. And then you go from that to not being able to do anything for yourself. It's frustrating. It really is. And that's the point I want to get across.
Well, let's talk about faith. And everybody that knows you, nobody has a doubt about how much faith you have, how much confidence you have in God. But I want you to particularly direct these comments to anybody that's watching that doesn't have faith, that doesn't have that understanding of God. How do you think they would have made it through this? Or what can you tell them the difference in having faith and not having faith is?
I do not understand how anyone without faith can make it through something like this. And I know that I'd be fool to say it never happens. But it's got to be so much easier if you have faith in the Lord, if you trust that He has a plan for you. Because going through this without faith, I just don't know how anyone can do it. And I feel bad for people that have to go through this. And they do. They do. And somehow they make it through. I'm sure they do. I'm sure there's a lot that don't. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a lot that make it through and don't make it through anywhere near as easily as I made it. And it wasn't easy. But I can't imagine doing it without faith. The entire time I'm in the hospital, the struggle I had, knowing that God has a plan for me, was, what's your plan? What's your goal here? What's the message you're trying to send me? By making it clear that you've made it pretty much impossible, at least in the short term, for me to be able to do what I was doing. And when I say that, I'm talking about I was helping others in a physical way. I was helping others, and I do get a lot of pride and a lot of joy from helping others. And what God was showing me, I still struggle with this right now, is I've got another plan for you. Mm-hmm. And in a healthy way, at least I think, I'm still trying to figure out what's the plan. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, if his plan for me was to continue riding your motorcycle and finding toilet paper, continue helping people move, continue helping people in a physical way, I don't think it would have struck me down. So I'm struggling. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this. Is the only thing I can think of is sharing the message and maybe helping people through that way. Yeah. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something else ultimately, but I'm just trying to execute whatever the plan is.
I think that there's a lot of things that are being shown to you, though, and I know with my own ministry, it does. Every week, every month, I start to grow more and see more of God's plan, and it doesn't happen overnight. But I think if we look at some of the things, just for example, the Robbie's podcast that
Robbie Nicholson, the fighter.
Yeah, talk about that, because honestly, I think that's God's work through you to help Robbie.
So Robbie does a podcast with us, and Chris Gross is a huge part of that podcast. Chris is our cameraman right now. And Chris basically co-hosts this with him. And it's funny because Robbie was very active. There's some similarities between what happened to me and what happened to Robbie. But it's unfair of me to even come close to comparing the two in a way, because Robbie was very active. Robbie was coaching baseball, and Robbie had 4 strokes. Is that right, Chris? 4? He's in his early to mid 40s when he has his 4 strokes. And you want to talk about getting struck down. He completely got struck down. And physically he's in much worse shape than I ever was in. And he's fighting through it right now. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to figure out the same things that I'm trying to figure out. But what's interesting and encouraging for me about working with Robbie is the way Robbie found me and found you was through your podcast. Mm-hmm. And he saw the similarities, I think.
Absolutely.
I don't want to speak for him.
Well, I think it was that someone in his church saw it and then had Robbie watch it. So I think there was even another one in that mix.
He reached out to you and wanted to connect with me. Mm-hmm. And Robbie's funny. Robbie's a funny guy. I think Chris does a much better job with Robbie. So I'm kind of quiet on his podcasts. And Robbie has accused me of being silent and not wanting to talk on this podcast. And the truth of the matter is, I think Chris and him do a good job, and I kind of enjoy listening to it and observing the improvement that I've seen in Robbie. And I think all of us have. And I would encourage you right now, if you're watching this and enjoying it or getting something out of it, to look up, wherever you listen to your podcast, look up The Fighter with Robbie Nicholson. And I think it'll do you some good.
So my whole ministry is on God's love and gratitude. Mm-hmm. I was one of those people that you called from the hospital. I was very surprised to receive your call. And of course, Satan got in my head and said, he must be calling to say goodbye. And I'm like, wait a minute, whoop. But you had called to thank me and tell me that you had been running the podcast through your head. And I could tell, because I know that Mark is a man that practices gratitude, having faith and gratitude on board in life before this helped you.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Through this. So I've had some very difficult walks that I find gratitude in. And so talk about that with this situation. Where was your gratitude?
I'm hesitant to talk about this. And Chris, I want you to do this. Give me if you're buying what I'm saying or if it sounds like I'm full of crap. Okay? Because I don't want to sound like I'm not patting myself. It wasn't me. It absolutely wasn't me. I like to think, and I'm pretty sure I did, that I practiced gratitude 99.5% of the time that I was in the hospital. And I know for a fact that's one of the things that kept me going in the hospital, is that I've been given that gift. And I always referred to it, even before, I referred to it as a gift, because I didn't earn it. I don't think I did anything in my life to build it up, like building a muscle or anything. I think it's just something I had, naturally. I've always been grateful. And even in the hospital, when I'm laying in bed, having the why me moments were not out of pity. They were actually out of gratitude. The question wasn't, why are you doing this to me? What have you done? You've struck me down. It was, what's my next step? What's your plan? How am I going to come out of this stronger? Because obviously you want me to. And once again, had nothing to do with me, but it sure as heck got me through it. It really did. And there were very few times, very, very few times, where I wasn't positive, where I didn't have a positive mental outlook. And even on the times where I did have that kind of a negative outlook, it was very short, and I was able to turn around very quickly. And that's all, has everything to do with gratitude.
Absolutely.
Everything to do with gratitude. And like I said before, I can't imagine. I don't think I would have made it without having that, because I'm a weak person. I'm telling you straight out right now, I don't want pain. I don't want illness. But I was in the hospital for close to 5 months. And I didn't realize it when I was going through it. I can't imagine doing it right now. And it's almost like this. When I'm riding my motorcycle, which I haven't done in over a year, when I'm riding my motorcycle, I feel very safe when I'm on it. But when I'm in my car and I see someone else doing it, I'm like, what kind of fool would ride a motorcycle? And that's kind of the way my hospital stay was. When I was going through it, I felt very good. Mm-hmm. When I look back on it from the outside, I don't know how I made it.
Yeah.
Because that's not me.
Yeah.
That is not me. When I was working out all the time, when I was healthy, I lost over 100 pounds in 8 months. And I was working out all the time. I called it Frito 90X, my workout. If you remember P90X,
yeah.
Which was a hard workout.
Right.
My workout was the opposite. It wasn't no pain, no gain. My workout was, man, if there's any pain, I'm done. So I knew in my head, I was willing to work out long, but I wasn't going to push myself. Mm-hmm. So it's not typical me to be able to survive a 5-month hospital stay.
Yeah. So last thing I want to talk about, unless you have more, is in this research of people who have passed, gone to heaven and come back and told the stories of being in heaven. There was something that was very significant to me. There was one man that said he was actually at a rodeo and he was on a horse, I think for, I don't know, whatever the tying is. What do you call that? Where they
calf roping?
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
I'm a big fan of Yellowstone, by the way. So
okay. So anyhow, he was getting ready. He was on the horse, getting ready to go out and rope a calf, and he just dropped dead.
Is this in real life?
This is real life. This is a real life story. Okay. So he died. He started going up a tunnel to a bright light, but as he turned back and looked down, someone in the arena stood up and started praying. And all these people So he would see a ball of light come up and another ball of light and another ball of light, another ball of light. And there were just all these lights as everybody joined in to pray for this man who was laying in the middle of the arena. And he said he looked back and the light just got brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. Now, I tell this because I always emphasize to you the number of people that prayed for you, and how I know sometimes you say there's other people that need prayers.
Yes.
But I want you to know, in all those days of you being ill, I want you to know how many lights, balls of light went up for you to God. And I want you to surrender yourself to that was God's work in those prayers, and you did deserve them. And
you can tell by my reaction. I'm still sorting all that out. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I want to know. I definitely had some weird experiences. Mm-hmm. I just chalked them up to the anesthesia. I just chalked them up to the being in a drug-induced coma. At the time, that's what I chalked them up to. I don't know. I didn't experience the bright light. I definitely experienced some stuff. A lot of the stuff I experienced is just coming back to me right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I want to face that reality of, I don't know why I wouldn't want to face that reality. Mm-hmm. There's a part of me that thinks it might be kind of cool if I was halfway to heaven, but I don't have the textbook story of seeing the light or seeing someone in my family or someone in my past that had passed away. But I definitely do have things I just chalked up to the drugs. It may not have been the drugs.
So that's what I would say. Don't chalk it up to science. Open your heart to God. Don't expect an explanation. Just go with where He's taking you. And I think that most of these people, and I was telling Chris a story about an atheist that died and went to heaven. And, God is good, as we all know. But sometimes we need to get our head away from science. It doesn't have to be black and white for us to understand. It can be all kinds of gray, and that's how he loves us.
Real quick.
Yes.
I want to thank everyone for the prayers. I really do. I want to point out some individuals too.
Please.
Real quick, that probably didn't deserve to be mentioned at the end, but I just want to get it out there. I've already mentioned Denise. Denise Hoyle was fantastic in my recovery. Her husband Eric also in my recovery. Were there in my apartment when I first got home. Hung out with me. So the Hoyles were fantastic. Bob Sebero and his wife Jeannie, same thing, hanging out at the apartment and doing things for me. Bob took my motorcycle, which right now it's probably a good thing you have it, Bob, because I'd be on it right now. I'd be trying. My brother and sister-in-law, who I absolutely thanked. My ex-wife's sister, Christy Perlow, fantastic, visited me in the rehab and was great. And I just want to point those people out individually and thank everyone else. And a lot of people that probably deserve to be thanked individually that I'm just forgetting in the moment. But I felt the prayers, and I want to thank everyone.
That's awesome. And I think that most people say, we don't need to thank you. We're just glad you're still here. So thank you, everybody, for listening to part 2. We hope you've seen part 1, but if not, go back and watch that. See where Mark was before this incredible journey. And we'll keep following up as long as he's got a story to tell.